All right, good afternoon. This is Chairman Adam Gomez of the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting. I believe none of the members of the committee might be joining us, but I do have Justin Hurst, President of the Council, that serves as a part of the committee, but the other two subcommittee members, for the time frame that was selected, becomes very, very hard for some of my colleagues to be able to attend some early meetings. I want to thank Councilors Tim Allen and Tracy Whitfield for joining us. We're joined by City Solicitor Edward Pakula, and also I believe our person that we've been working with, that's been hired through the city with marijuana, Julie Steiner, and then we have our clerk that has been part of the marijuana discussions before she had stepped into her new title. So for the most part, it looks like this is all that we have here. So first and foremost, Solicitor, I want to thank you for coming to this meeting, giving us your time, and all of you that have joined us. It seems that we, for some odd reason, it's only us. So I'm just going to leave it open to my first question, specific to, obviously, there was a press release that was given out today in respect to what kind of particularly what this meeting was about, to understand exactly where we're at. And I would like for you to just give me a little bit of information on that.
You know, there's a lot happening right now in the city. Marijuana is a big part of that. And what we're trying to do is get phase 2 out the door, so we can reap the benefits of that. We've been delayed as the CCC regulations. They did a comprehensive reform, which we expected to have completed by now, but it keeps getting delayed. My understanding is that they will be finalized in a vote November 30th. And what we are doing and what we've done is put together some draft based on the draft regulations, so that we can get something out like within 2 weeks after that. The RFPQ will be comprehensive as well in terms of the types of licenses. It will involve all, whether it's retail establishments, craft manufacturers, in addition to manufacturers, the cultivators, and delivery, which is a new license. We had anticipated an original delivery license, but that has also been changing as well. So we have a draft that is almost complete. Once we get the word that we're on solid ground, we'll get it out there. And we'll get the process going for the phase 2. You know, in addition, we have 4 businesses trying to get going from our last round. My understanding is one of those will be opening shortly. I'm not sure what the date is, but the communications have been going back and forth between like building department and what have you. It makes it look like it's imminent, excuse me. And then INSA is doing renovations, and that'll probably be the next one to open. And then 2 others, there's the 6 Bricks applicant who they received their provisional license from the CCC, but that was for an address at 250 Albany Street. They have since submitted a request for change of location. As you know, they've been before the city council. That's been continued. The council was awaiting a host community agreement. We're getting close on that too. The mayor has asked the internal review committee to convene. I think they have a date for next week. I'm not sure exactly what date, but so that is in the works, and we're getting close on that. The last applicant was 311 Page Boulevard. They, as far as I know, have not submitted an application yet, but they do want to, or they're planning to do one, but with a new partner. Their partner had been Tyka Green Inc. I'm not exactly sure the entity of their new partner, but we are in the process. We've been talking with them, and we're in the process of gathering their information so we get a new host community agreement to them. And then I'm sure they'll be filing with the CCC. So that's sort of like where we are in the phases of, and with the licenses that we had issued so far, and you know, what we've been working on.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I get, I got one hand in the queue. Can we just talk about a little bit, I guess, with maybe our consultant can answer this question as well. What are the changes that we foresee that we're waiting on for the CCC before we had, because I know that we had a meeting back in September, and in September we thought that September might be, oh, I think it was in August, and we thought that September might have been the day.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you know, from my, sorry about that, from my, you know, because I stay kind of hip to what's going on with the CCC, you know, essentially the only thing that I seen that was kind of, you know, that we're waiting for was delivery, because delivery was this new license that was added. Instead of it being the prior 9, now it's up to 10, and delivery is one of those that is for some, so can we talk a little bit about, you know, specifically what we're waiting for when it comes to like dispensary, cultivation, and then I got another question on, you had stipulated something else that I'm going to dive into, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So basically, what do we believe is coming from the CCC that's going to be, you know, that we're waiting for in November 30th, which obviously it's around the corner.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Gomez. So, you know, once a year, the CCC has been undergoing a review process of its regulatory scheme and issuing amendments. So this is really part of a yearly process that they've been involved in. And so my projection was based on what they had done in the past. And in the past, they had basically gone through their public listening process and issuing their revised regulations in September. That's what happened last year and the year before. This year, they're doing such comprehensive revisions that they continued the public hearing process over just the delivery portion. So that's the portion that's gotten the most PR, but there's actually comprehensive regulations. There's so many things that they are revising, and I could certainly send you a red line so you can really appreciate how massive it is. You know, as a summary, I'd say they're doing a lot of tweaks to the energy and environmental components. So this is really going to affect any kind of applicant. There's a lot of tweaks in energy, environmental, sort of pesticide, and you know, things that can be added in the cultivation process. So these are things that really will hit any of your marijuana establishments. They've done a lot in terms of training recently. This has been a big push for them to be able to train their marijuana agents, and they've put together comprehensive responsible vendor training protocol, essentially. That's a lot like curriculum. That's going to be very important for not only the establishments, but for anyone that operates within it. A big thing for municipalities right now is that they are pretty significantly changing the definition of the buffer zone, how that buffer zone is calculated. So where it used to be from the nearest point of the marijuana establishment to the nearest point of the lot of the school, so nearest point of the lot to the nearest point of the lot, they're actually changing that so that it's going to be from the nearest points of the marijuana establishment lot, ... I'm going to come back to this in a second, to the front, the nearest point of the egress or ingress or egress, really the front door of the marijuana establishment, not the lot line, but the front door, of the school, excuse me. So nearest point of the lot of the marijuana establishment to the middle of the closest front door.
So basically, it's not going to be parcel to parcel. We ran into some applicants that had that issue because they're probably 497 away from the 500, and it was parcel to parcel. It made it really difficult where some places seemed to be a really good place for one of these dispensaries to go, but they were knocked out because of some provisionary from the state.
Exactly.
So they're tweaking that from doorway to doorway, because we were running through that. I remember when we were discussing it in my in our meetings beforehand when we were constructing the zoning ordinance. So that would need for us to make some further amendments to our zoning to reflect that as well.
Correct, Commissioner. So and it's from the nearest point of the marijuana establishment lot line, I'll come back to that because I'm going to complicate that in a second, to the nearest point of the doorway. So you're right, this would actually expand the available number of properties that can be available within a municipality. So before, where you have your sort of like something that was 497 feet away, it might now be allowable within the buffer zone definition. The complication, because it's a pretty complicated definition that they're putting through, is that irregularly shaped lots. So if you take something like a flagship lot that's got a driveway with a lot behind it, for example, they're telling us to carve out any portion of an irregularly shaped lot that cannot really fit one of the marijuana establishments. So if you did have like a big driveway or something like that with a setback lot, you would just carve out the portion of the lot that you can't fit in the marijuana establishment on. That no longer gets counted. And then you go from the nearest point of the lots that would permit the marijuana establishment to sit. There's also this complication of impassable barriers. So, if there is something between the marijuana establishments and the school that serves as an impassable barrier, like a waterway or something like that, then you actually exclude the impassable barrier as well. I could send you the proposed definition language so you can see it.
I would appreciate that. So then we can hold another meeting and just dive into those specific changes once they become, I guess, official. I think that I apologize. Don't want to cut you off.
Oh,
City
okay.
Solicitor, do you want to chime in real quick because you have your hand raised in the queue?
Yeah, thank you. Let me just add to what Attorney Steiner said by saying, we're anticipating now that there will be a conflict between what Springfield has and what the state regs are going to be. We're not so concerned about making changes to what Springfield has as just making sure we have the right standards. So if there's a conflict between the state reg and Springfield, state reg governs, but as we evaluate applications, we need to know what that standard is. As applicants are putting packages together, they need to know what the standard is. So, just to add to that, we are waiting. We need that to do our evaluations. We don't have to wait till Springfield changes its ordinances, if you will.
No, understood. And my question, honestly, just on a piggyback, and I'll let Ms. Steiner to finish, is are we subject to, well, obviously I don't think we are, but subject to any kind of disgruntled other applicant that was knocked out in the last round because of that barrier situation? I know that there was a couple of folks that were trying to go into certain areas that they kind of fell under that threshold. But, you know, because it was property line to property line, does that, I guess, those folks would come back online, and then the map, and obviously this is I would have to have another question because this was open it up for Phil, and the map would obviously change, right? And some areas that aren't on the map are going to become part of the map that, you know, are places where these type of businesses could go.
Right. So there hasn't been any harm to anyone because we're having another round. And if someone feels, hey, you know, I would, even though I didn't qualify then, I will qualify now. Well, they can submit an application under whatever new regs do come out, and we'll consider that in due course, just along with all the other regulations and all the other applications.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Ms. Steiner, if you had some more to add, I apologize. Thank you for a little bit of that feedback, Solicitor Pakula. Ms. Steiner, if you would like to finish, and then I would open it up to questions. And let the record show that we have a member of our committee that has joined us, Councilor Fenton.
Terrific. Thank you. So there are many sort of tweaks all throughout the regulations, but the energy and environmental compliance, there's a lot of compliance changes that they have made. They've created this whole leadership rating criteria that now apply to the licensees. And I think the biggest one, you know, is the one that you've heard about, the delivery situation. You know, this, of course, greatly impacts an area like Springfield, an area of disproportionate impact. And, you know, so we want to include it and scoop it into this round. It now has previously, the commission had contemplated delivery in what it called delivery only. That was sort of its prior construct, but it had not yet crafted those regulations. And so through a series of rounds this time around, and this is what the delay is about, the commission will take its final vote on November 30th, we think, you know, to the best that we can surmise. And I think that will happen because I listened to Friday's listening session. There are now two types of delivery licensees. And for both of these types, there's a 3-year exclusivity period for what are called equity applicants, certified economic empowerment priority applicants, and social equity program participants. These are both types of equity applicants that create diversity in the industry, and the commission is going to hold all the delivery, both types that I'll tell you about, open for 3 years. And that period, by the way, begins once the first marijuana delivery operator commences operations. So it's from the date of commencing operations of the first one for 3 full years, just to try to really increase equity participation in this burgeoning industry. So the first is now called, and the names have changed quite recently too, a marijuana courier. And a marijuana courier is your Uber Eats type. That's someone who is delivering from a marijuana establishment and taking a delivery fee for delivering. The sale itself goes through the marijuana establishment, usually through a retailer. So they basically pick it up and deliver it. There's lots of regulations also about what their cars are outfitted with, and body cameras and all these things that became, quite controversial over time, but that the safety features that the Cannabis Control Commission has really thought through. The second type, and this was the sort of surprise entry, but it's actually phenomenally beneficial to social equity participants. It's called a marijuana delivery operator. Now, if you start reading about it and you read about a wholesale delivery license, you're reading just the old terminology. This is now called the marijuana delivery operator. And this is someone who can get a warehouse and locate that warehouse wherever they want to. That becomes their principal place of business. And then they can purchase cannabis themselves. They can purchase it directly from micro businesses or retailers, right from cultivators, and they can package in that warehouse and deliver to those who make an order, essentially. And so it's like they've become a level of a retailer at far less money. Basically, they have to have a warehouse. Now that warehouse has to follow all the marijuana establishment safety rules. So, you know, you've got limited access areas, loading, you know, security in terms of the loading and unloading, the same product storage provisions that other cannabis operators have. They have to think about the, you know, education and all of that. They can take product, buy it at wholesale. They can what's called white labeling. This is the Cannabis Control Commission's terminology, not mine. They can slap their own label on it and they can then sell it.
No, I completely understand that perfectly on how that works. So so these kind of have some similar guidelines without the growing operation, but the more of the packaging operation before it goes out. So essentially, they can buy off a cultivation center and then distribute it the way that they would want to distribute it. They're basically a retailer without having the storefront, but they have the delivery service.
Exactly.
And then in the interim of this product, they're able to white label it to make it some. Obviously, there's guidelines that they have to, you know, show the seed to sale, and, you know, have the serial numbers and all of that good stuff. But essentially, it would be essentially their product, and they can white label it. So then when it goes out through the door, it's that producer's kind of situation. So. But it's on a magnitude of a scale of, I would say, similar to like not as a big cultivator, but a producer of, and then you obviously it has transporters, right? So you'd have a fleet of cars and a fleet of staff, and it would bring a lot of opportunity for job creation. I look at that as a big opportunity, a big plus, because essentially where a lot of this gets kind of blurry line, and this is just an opinion is that one, it could bring a lot of jobs, but secondly, it brings a lot of exclusivity to being people don't having to go and having a storefront where they feel like it's an eyesore versus, you know, because everybody has feelings when it comes to the industry. So this kind of is more like a private way of obtaining your situation and obviously moving your situation and getting it out into the public. So we have a question from President Justin Hurst. Justin, you may ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions. Ed, what is the timing around this second round? Do we have any definitive dates? So if they come out on November 30th and make a decision with respect to delivery, do we have everything in place to move forward? And if so, what would that time frame be?
Sorry. Well, we think so, but we need to actually see the language and make sure that we've incorporated all the details. Historically, when they vote to approve, it typically takes about a week for them to actually release the printed regulations, and so if we then take a week to sort of review what we get, then so we're anticipating a 2-week lag time from that vote. So if they vote on the 30th, we would anticipate the RFQP hitting the streets by 2 weeks after that.
So 2 weeks after that. So you're talking about the middle of December before Christmas.
Correct.
Okay, and then my second question to you is, this time around, are we planning on having separate RFPs for cultivation, delivery, and the marijuana dispensaries?
No,
I know that didn't happen.
Those applications would look different, but the RFP covers all of them.
Tell me more.
Julie, you want to talk about that?
Okay, so there are 10 license types, only 9 of which apply to Springfield because one is social consumption. Those are cultivators. This is going to really test my memory. Cultivators, marijuana cooperatives, which is like a type of co-op where you follow the co-op principles, product manufacturers, micro businesses, independent testing laboratories, transporters, that not delivery, but transporters who take from marijuana establishment to marijuana establishment, our delivery folks, retailers, and research facilities. So those are 9 different types of licensees, and we would be opening it up to all of them. My understanding is, unless something changes in the numbers, the mayor in this round would be soliciting up to 4 more retailers. Again, there could be subsequent rounds, and 2 specific cultivators, and all other types, which could really open us up. We really have to see what rolls in the door, but hopefully we'll get delivery folks, and I think Springfield will also be quite a good location for independent testing laboratories or research facilities or things like that. It'd be interesting to see what does come in the door. I'm not sure,
So
who's interested in what.
So I appreciate that. I think that the issue that I had the last time was that we were going to accept 4 applicants in that process. And so when we accepted the 4 applicants, regardless of what the license that they were seeking was, we still only accepted 4. And so if we had 4 dispensaries that were better than, say, a manufacturing lab, I'm not 100% sure how you could compare the 2. Or if you had a cultivation, somebody who was interested in cultivation, they were all lumped together. And to me, I find it hard to believe that we can have a fair process and not delineate them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think you make a really great point, and I think as someone observing this whole thing, it doesn't surprise me that Springfield proceeded the way it proceeded, because I think I certainly don't feel this way because this is my business, right? But I think, a lot of cities are very scared of cannabis operations, especially when they first start out, and they have these sort of fears and assumptions about the industry. And so they take it slowly. And I would, if I were to describe what my outside view is of what happened in Springfield, that the phase 1 was their attempt to make a very cautious approach towards phasing this in. And, things have gone quite well. And so I love to see that now they're really opening themselves up to the next phase and saying, let's welcome this in the door. And I'm really encouraged, especially in an area of disproportionate impact, that there's so much excitement for the new types of operators that might come in the door, particularly delivery operators.
So to that point, I didn't hear the mayor say anything with respect to delivery, and maybe just because it was new, when he said that he would like 4 dispensaries and 2 cultivators. I also didn't hear the mayor talk about any of the other licenses that you just named, and it seems to me like there are missed opportunities there. Would you agree?
I think I don't get involved usually or have anything to do with the press releases or statements that the mayor made, but I could tell you that that's why he's been waiting, because he wants to open it up to all the different operators. I've made this point to him and he listened and said, okay. So, I don't know that it found its way into the communications. I'm not involved in all that, but I can tell you that he is opening it up to all those different types of licensees.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I think the solicitor wants to chime in on trying to answer that as well. He has his hand up in the queue.
I was hoping he would.
Yeah, no problem. Solicitor Pakula, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me just add to what Julie had said. One of the things that came out of Friday's meeting with the state was a statement from Amherst, basically sort of protesting that they're afraid they're going to be shut out with a lot of the types of licenses, that people are going to be gravitating more to a place like Springfield to run their operation as opposed to in Amherst. So we are anticipating that there will be a lot of interest in all the types of licenses. Now, my understanding is that when we put down the limits of licenses and we capped them at 15, you may recall, as that's part of our ordinances, it was based on the statutory standards. There are no such limits with regard to, for example, delivery licenses. My understanding is that those limits don't apply. So I think we're going to, and I think the mayor wants to see, what is the market going to demand, so to speak? How many people will be looking for these new types of licenses, and then make a decision, well, as we evaluate who do we want to do a host community agreement with, because we'll have to have a host community agreement with all of them and all the different types, and they will all be a revenue source, they'll all be an employment source, so it hopefully will all work together. So I think the anticipation is we may be looking at 4 retail establishments to work with our cap. And, just considering that Springfield is not a huge agricultural center, we do anticipate there may be cultivators looking to come here, but we're not anticipating large numbers. And the mayor has suggested 2, and I think that's reasonable. And we did talk about all those things, but you should know that another thing in these regulations has to deal with the fact that there will be outdoor cultivation as well, which is a new thing in these licenses. And when we talked to the mayor about that, we talked about potential locations. We really don't have any, and we talked about, as a policy decision, not wanting to seek outdoor cultivation operations. And so that's another aspect above and beyond the as you would noted, well, delivery has been getting all the press, but this cultivation and outdoor cultivation has been another thing that we've kept our eyes on, that we're trying to plan for and address in our RFP. So I add that as a supplement to what Attorney Steiner said.
So I just want to just add, and then I have another question in the queue from Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Whitfield, once I'm done with my question, I'll let you have the floor. I do see your hand raised. So Solicitor Pakula, maybe it's more just like an opinion. It's not really much of a question. It's, one thing that I have, have realized and I have seen, I think that Springfield, right, out of the surrounding towns that have said no to marijuana, and I'm just talking more of an opportunistic point of view, and when we did travel to Colorado, when we spoke to different folks from the surrounding towns, right, was that some of these individuals that are ready to be a part of this industry, let it be any of these, because the only way I think you can actually get your marijuana, if you bought it from the city of Springfield, which nowhere you can open it and get your marijuana in the city of Springfield, is through, one would be after November 30th, through a delivery service and also a dispensary. As of right now, we have one, which is on Boston Road, right, that is going to be opening. And then secondly, we're looking at, you said that INSA might be opening right after that. And then we're still working on figuring out what's going on with the one that was in East Springfield, and also one that was going to be on Albany Street that is looking to be moved down to the Republic. So in the interim of, in my case, and I think President Hearst had alluded to it, is I know that, the administration is treading water and trying to figure out, what's the best case scenario and waiting for these impacts essentially. But don't we think like to curb, right? And the whole reason why this industry came into its existence was, we want to be able to do what? To curb the black market, right? And essentially, if we were to be able to curb the black market, it would be, obviously, we know we have a cap of 15 that I think we were very specific that was only detailed behind only dispensaries. Outside of that spectrum, right, those other licenses could come into play and didn't, and this is just my mind, right? This is my mind talking that, like, if it was a cultivator, they could apply, right, through a different RFP, RFQ that was specifically just for cultivators. And then you guys can address it if it was an outdoor, indoor, whatever they were proposing. But then on the flip side, when it comes to testing the product, what ends up happening is some folks that are growing in their backyards, which is, or inside of their houses as of now, they're actually sending their marijuana to be looked at, right, or to be tested all the way to Framingham. Right, which I think if we were to look at the in those industries that are kind of protected and essentially, we would be able to hit the curve, that economic renaissance, that influx of revenue that now during this pandemic we so desperately need when it comes to job creation. And I know that our zoning regs, we have to look at what it looks like in particular, but I think that, in my position, knowing marijuana and knowing how marijuana moves in the city of Springfield illegally, that there's a lot of opportunity that the city could really capitalize. And honestly, knowingly that the surrounding communities that some do have it and don't have it are capitalizing from Springfield dollars, because people are traveling to East Hampton, to Northampton, and now into Chicopee to get their medicinal marijuana, or let it be the recreational use. And I just, and I understand we trying to, do the best thing we can, but there's so much, I think, opportunity for us to be able to touch those stuff and really look at them like in their different forms of not just throwing them in one basket, because I think even though marijuana is just one basket, there's different parts to marijuana. That let it be recreation, let it be the delivery of one place to another, let it be cultivation. And even she talked about that, obviously it's not a license now, but even the consumption, right? Like, I know that there's a place in Worcester for some reason that fell off the radar that ended up being kind of like a social club that's open for consumption. And I know that that's not on the table as of now, but I just feel like there's tremendous opportunity specific to, I think we were talking about yesterday in a casino oversight meeting about this blue zone, that we're looking for this uptick of people that we're waiting for to flourish the downtown. And obviously no foul intended, but it's been kind of rumored that, these marijuana facilities are not wanted in the district, that when we went to Colorado, essentially you wouldn't know it was a marijuana facility unless you went inside one of these places. But that's what was bringing people back into these areas. But that's just my opinion. I just have to get that off my chest. I have two hands in the queue. I'm going to start with Councilor Whitfield, then I'm going to go with Councilor Fenton, and then Councilor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ed, I'm looking for a little bit of clarification. You said that the mayor is recommending opening 2. Is that what you said? For the next round, and 2 meaning 2 of any type, 2 of each type? I just wasn't clear what you meant.
So we have a cap as to retail establishments at 15.
Right.
And so in the first round, we did 4. And so in this round, we're looking to do 4 more. But
Okay.
in addition, we're looking to approve up to 2 cultivation businesses. But there are no caps for any of the other types of licenses which Professor Steiner and which Councilor Gomez was referring to. So there would be no cap on those.
Okay, thank you for that. So my second question relates to something that the mayor spoke to in his press release and today, that came out today, about waiting on the New Nerve Citizens Council for a letter of recommendation before he develops a host community agreement with Six Bricks. And I'm just wondering, because he said as it was done in the first round, and I don't remember the internal committee waiting for any recommendation letters from the Julie, you're on committee as well. I don't recall the committee waiting for any recommendation letters from any neighborhood councils, because we did in the application process put a stipulation that the applicants would have to have community meetings, and community meetings included neighborhood councils, businesses, organizations, residents, whoever wanted to attend those community meetings. But there was no stipulation that we had to wait for letter of recommendations. And this is what I recall from neighborhood councils. Julie, am I wrong, correct? Can you chime in?
You're correct. So, in the first round, your memory is correct, Councilor Whitfield. We have had all applicants submit to us the criteria that is basically, state statutory criteria, and that is that they would submit to us the community outreach meeting information. How did they notify the community, who showed up, what comments, they take notes at the community outreach meeting, what comments were made at the community outreach meeting, and what is their ultimate plan to address those comments. I spoke with the mayor about this, and I think that the mayor was very influenced by, and Ed, you'll chime in, but my sense was that the mayor was really like tripping over himself because he was very influenced by the city council's statement to INSA. This is the only thing that I could gather from this. When the city council, during the special permit process, said to INSA, where is the written letter of support? I think he took from that there needed to be written letters of support. Ed, jump in. This is how
I just want to jump in because I was the one that made that statement, and I don't know if it's proper for me to answer it, but it was adjudicated that regardless of the neighborhood board's support or unapproval, that it held no weight or no value. So for him to make that statement, it was confusing because obviously I represent the Ward 1 district, but it really kind of set me aside that statement was made, knowingly that it was adjudicated that the reasoning for the reason why I said no, which that wasn't the reason, but that's another story, but it was used. And I don't know because obviously some host community agreements are very different from others. And obviously we know this, but for some reason, I think that it led on and it was believed and perceived, and maybe Ed could jump in and talk about this, that they hold some kind of weight in creating a new HCA for the amended HCA that Six Bricks is looking for. And then I was going to segue into this conversation after we're kind of done with this update, but I know we've got ahead of time. But for the most part, yes. Thank you for that answer. That's good that I had that question. So Ed, if you have anything to add to that, to answer Tracy's question.
Sure. From a legal perspective, we haven't had to deal with any situation where we've approved one location and now someone is coming in and saying, hey, I now want to do a new location. So, you know, we don't have any precedent for that. And, you know, there is no question that, take, for example, a liquor license. If someone's looking to change their location, it is absolutely appropriate for neighborhood input to be considered. And you know, looking at marijuana regulation has been comparable to alcohol regulation, I think it's entirely appropriate to consider neighborhood input. You know, I think that in terms of where that fits in the process, it's, again, this is not, you know, there isn't a precedent. It's unprecedented. And so I think it's totally okay for the mayor who, you know, that's his job, is to get neighborhood input, to say, hey, I would like to see what the neighborhood has to say, and to consider that if he feels it's appropriate. But that, I think, is something that an elected official like yourself, I think, is just normal. And
I would like to respond.
No, I understand. That's fine. Mr. Pagula, are you tied up before she responds? Just wanted to make sure that you were done speaking.
Well, yeah, I apologize, Councilor Whitfield. I can just finish up if I may. And I just want to add that you know, there's a number of factors anytime that you're looking at any sort of land use, and whether it's the city council looking at a special permit, whether it's the license commission looking at a liquor license, or whether it's the mayor having to decide whether a host community agreement should be issued. I think it's an appropriate criteria. That being said, how it all fits together is again something we're going to be turning to the internal review committee to get their recommendation and see how they evaluate that. I don't think that there is no, you know, to use another, you know, litmus test, if you will. That's not what's happening here. This is one criteria. It's an appropriate criteria. The mayor is rightfully interested in it. You know, how it fits all together is, you know, more complicated.
All right, Councilor Whitfield, you may respond. Then after Councilor Whitfield, you're done. I know Councilor Fenton has a question, and then after that, President Hurst.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I'm going to say these things as respectfully as I can. And Julie, you know that I definitely loved working with you and have the utmost respect for you, and I'm glad that you stated your opinion. However, I don't want to put any words or thoughts in his mouth or mind on why he may have thought that getting letters of support from neighborhood councils was part of the first process, because it wasn't. And I want to make that clear on this call. That was not part of the process. We did not need letters of recommendation or letters of support from neighborhood councils. While they would have been considered, and also they would be like great to have in the applications, they were not required. And it was not required in the first round, because in his press release, he said also just as important and as sensitive, and he's talking about as related to social justice, and as we've done with our first round, and out of respect for our neighborhood councils, is their input. We did not request their input. We did not require their input, nor was it part of the determination of the application. So I do want to go on record saying that. I also wanted to add that the location of the proposed new site is not in the North End. It is in the metro area. And so I just wanted to make clear that while the mayor thinks it's very, very important to get a letter of recommendation from the New North Citizens Council, which predominantly is the council for the North End, this particular location is in the metro area. So I was thinking more of the Armory Civic Quadrangle Association, or maybe Lower Liberty Heights. I'm not really sure which association, but I know that she did host another community meeting, which is part of the application, on September 23rd. These are the requirements for the internal review committee, and I'm going to tell you why, Ed, because we wanted to eliminate different neighborhood councils showing precedence over one marijuana applicant over the other. So we did not want to make neighborhood council letter of recommendation a requirement in the application. And I just wanted to go on record saying that we did have discussions on should applicants get letters of recommendation from the neighborhood councils. And we said no, because say a neighborhood council favors one applicant over the other, that's the application that they would recommend and write great letters of support for that applicant. And so we had discussions, lengthy discussions about why we wouldn't accept letter of recommendations from neighborhood councils. And so I don't understand why the mayor would need a letter of recommendation from the New North Citizens Council when this location is not even in the North End district. And so I just wanted to go on record saying that I'm not looking for a response to that unless you deem it necessary, Ed. And I do understand that with different liquor licenses and other special permits, we do ask for letters of recommendation from the appropriate neighborhood council. And I just wanted to go on record saying that.
So I know that we have Solicitor Pakula in the queue. If you can just give me a moment, just for the interest of time, I want to make sure that all counselors ask their questions. Counselor Fenton, if you can ask your question now, and then also after that, Counselor Hurst, and if we can tie them all together, and then if the solicitor or our consultant can answer those questions so that we can tie up, because I just want to give you guys a time check. It is 4:55, and any other counselors have any more questions. If I don't have a pressing reason to jump off, but I know we usually try to keep these meetings to an hour, but if we need to do a couple more extra minutes and there's no objection to that, we can do that. So Counselor Fenton, Counselor Hurst after, and then Mr. Pakula, you can have the floor right after.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine isn't so much a question, it's a comment. Earlier, you mentioned the Convention Center Overlay District, and I just wanted to, and you mentioned potential restrictions in that overlay district related to marijuana uses. And I wanted to just tell you that I did raise that issue, I think last week before we had the meeting yesterday in Casino Oversight. And that was not a prohibition that was included in the current draft of the overlay. I raised it because of the issue that you just described, which is that previously there was a sensitivity to having marijuana uses in and around the casino. And I think that we'll have a policy discussion on that moving forward, but it's not in the current draft proposal of that overlay district to restrict it.
No problem. I was implying the fact that maybe we could have one or two. Not saying, whatever it is, it's just, to me, my mind is, I want to get people on the street, right? We want to get people on the street. Mm-hmm. We want people going up in and out, going to go eat. I don't know where they're going to do whatever they got to go do, but, that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
totally with understanding. Yeah.
I agree. And I'm not saying whether it's a good or a bad idea. I'm just telling you what the current status of it is, and we can work on it together.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Counselor Fenton. Counselor Hurst, you may have the floor, and then Solicitor Pakula. And if there is any other counselors after Solicitor Pakula may ask the question, and then from there we can tie them, and we can hold another meeting right after this. I know that this is the first time we've actually had this open discussion, and I know that we can continue talking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to Councilor Whitfield's point, everything that I feel on that issue was highlighted in the press release that I sent. But I think really, the crux of the issue is that as social equity applicants are considered by the city, it seems to me that we're not doing enough. And when I look at the individuals who are getting ready to open tomorrow, we're talking big business with lots of money. And we all know that over on Boston Road. When I look at ENSA, who sounds like they're getting ready to open up second, big business, lots of money. And so certainly they're able to open up quicker, and they're going to start making the money first. When we look at 100% minority owned, Black and Hispanic, women owned, they're flailing to stay afloat. And I think we need to take ownership of that. And those that are in, those that are in government, and Julie, I appreciate all your work and your efforts, but that is a problem that has to be addressed for the next round. In addition, the idea that we have 3 white men and 1 that is majority women and minority owned is problematic, considering the fact that minorities have been disproportionately impacted by marijuana when it was illegal. And so I guess my question is, what can we do to balance out the numbers in the next round? How much more of an effort? What can we do legally? Because I'm not satisfied. 3 people out of 4 are white males, and at least 2, I don't know the other one, are big businesses with money. That's exactly what we were trying to get around. That's what the state's trying to get around. And so I'd love to hear the answer to that question, but let me just make my last point, because I'm not going to speak after this. I want the record to reflect that when it comes to delivery, please let Mayor Sarno know that I'm watching his every step, because that is designed to give minorities access to what they have failed to have been able to get access to thus far. And that's a piece of the pie. And so if that is delayed in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to press release him until he's tired of hearing from me. That will be inexcusable. So Ed, if you come back to me saying that that's not included, and that is designed by the state solely for minorities, they know we haven't gotten our fair share, even when the state legislation has tried to give it to us, I'm going to have a problem.
I don't know if you were cut off or you stopped talking, Councilor Hurst. Testing. Councilor Hurst,
I'm finished.
Oh, you're finished? No, I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't know if I lost you or something. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Pakula, Solicitor Pakula, I apologize for the wait. You may.
Yeah. No, I appreciate all the comments that both you, Councilor Whitfield, and Councilor Hurst have made, particularly with regard to the social equity aspect. But what we're talking about is a lot of policy, and added to that policy has been the notion that for the first 3 years, it's exclusively, there can't be any other applicants other than social justice applicants with regard to the delivery licenses. So that's written, at least now, into the draft, and we're anticipating that that's going to continue through the final vote. So that's the first thing everyone needs to know. From a policy standpoint, the CCC, we anticipate, will have exclusively, and so there will not be any other applicants considered other than social justice applicants for the delivery types of licenses, the 2 types being, as we call, the Uber Eats model, and the other being sort of the Amazon model, if I may, that will be exclusively for social justice applicants. In addition, as a policy matter, my recollection is that the mayor, and I believe it's in our draft of what we're working on, is that of the four, I believe one of them is reserved for a social justice applicant. So, you know, in this round, and I think we've spoken about this before, Councilor Hurst, let's say that, you know, there are no social justice applicants that sort of rise to that top four, then that will be set aside, and there'll be three that will go out, and that'll be carried over to the next round. So those are some of the things where, from a policy standpoint, you know, the mayor has tried to indicate the importance that the social justice aspect plays in this. But going back to the requirements, there is no requirement of a neighborhood meeting. There has been no requirement of a neighborhood meeting. There has been a recommendation, could you go to the neighborhood? And my belief is that the answer was yes, and they've done that. I believe their neighborhood meeting was on November 10th. So there will be some input that will be forthcoming, and the mayor will properly consider that as a legal and valid criteria that can be considered as a matter of policy. But to say that that's a requirement, it was not found. And again, Six Bricks was a first round applicant. As I said, we're breaking new ground as one of those applicants, after going through the whole process, now is looking to change that location. And my understanding is there was a recommendation, could we get some neighborhood input? And they did. There was also a community outreach meeting, and that was required. Once you have a community outreach meeting, and more than 6 months goes by, you have to get another one if you still haven't gotten there yet. But that being said, this is a whole new location. And just like the fact that there was an outreach meeting, there's gonna be a special permit meeting. And at that special permit meeting, anybody can come from any neighborhood and say anything they want, for or against. And that was Councilor Gomez's point, I think, not anything other than that, when we were considering the INSA. And I'm sure that that's going to come up again, that we will have neighborhood people participating at the special permit hearing, and it certainly won't be limited to any neighborhood in particular. So those are policy questions. They're not requirements. They're valid criteria for consideration. And I hope that I have responded, but as I said, I appreciate the input that you have provided on that.
Thank you, Solicitor Pakula. Before I close out, last hand in the queue is from Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Whitfield, I will entertain your last comment, and then I'll have closing remarks. Then it looks like we'll just towards, I would say, the beginning of December, we'll hold another meeting to see kind of where we're at. But I'll get in a little bit into that after Councilor Whitfield, and then we'll close out. Thank you for your patience and your time.
Thank you for letting me get my final comment. And I just want to say thank you, Attorney Pakula, for clarifying that the neighborhood council letter of support or recommendation is not required, but the community input meeting is required, along with the names of the community members that attended the meeting. So that is absolutely correct, but not required, the neighborhood council support or letter of support in this process. I also just wanted to make sure that it's clear that the New North Citizens Council is not the council that represents the metro area, so to speak. I'm not really sure which neighborhood council does, but I just wanted to also say that waiting for their recommendations is something I truly don't understand, since it's not solely in their area, it's in the metro area. And so I would be more, I don't know, I think that I would understand a little bit better if it came from the neighborhood council that represents that area.
Councilor Fenton, I think you have a closing ask. You may go before I speak.
Yeah, just Councilor Gomez, just because Councilor Whitfield's brought it up a few times about the Republican building not being in the area that New North oversees. You know, we all experience from time to time the fact that there's no like perfect boundaries for neighborhood councils. But specifically about that building, what neighborhood council does service that building? And also, I know recently we had the Kittredge building come before us a few times. Did that involve any hearings with the neighborhood council?
New North Citizens Council. So I'm going to, that's what I was going to close out with, is really talking about, obviously I know the district very well and how in the last 6 years, some of these things have transpired and where the lines get confused a little bit. So I was willing to talk a little bit about that. In my personal opinion, why kind of maybe, because obviously I'm going to be honest, it's not like the mayor and I speak as much as I would like to, but let me just get back to what we have here. Councilor Hurst, would you like to add something before I close out?
Yes, I just wanted to say I did reach out to Phil, and Phil said, I said, if there was a special permit application, where would they be going? And where would you recommend that they go to if the Republican building needed a special permit from the city council? And it was the Armory Quadrangle Civic Association. But you might have more information on past practice, Councilor Gomez, and I know sometimes it overlaps. I would just also add that I think the appropriate place for most of those discussions is probably during our special permit hearing, where folks can come out and express whether they're for or against this particular location. I'm not 100% sure that that should be factored in to the host community agreement, and that testimony will all be on record. And it has more to do with the location and the use, if I understand what the mayor is trying to get at, and whether it's an adverse impact to the community. So I think the mayor ought to just let the process work. That's my final thing I'm gonna say.
All right.
Sorry.
So I want to thank. Can you guys hear me? I apologize. I was making sure I was off on mute. I want to thank all of you guys for joining me this evening. I know that having consistent meetings back to back this whole week is kind of hard, and during the time of this pandemic, we're going through a lot of unprecedented things going on, specifically with one, the update of where round 2 is, and secondly, trying to understand what was just press released today on in respect to the host community agreement and the amendments that Sixburts is looking towards, and also how the administration is trying to figure out how to find a resolution to that. A couple of colleagues have obviously reached out to me before this meeting specific to what they read. And just in my, and this is my humblest opinion when it comes to the District of Ward 1, the downtown district doesn't have a neighborhood board, right? The neighborhood board in the downtown district never had a neighborhood board because downtown district, outside of all the other districts that encompass Ward 1, which traditionally what was also part of the narrative that I tried to curb early on when I was elected in 2015, was that no foul intended, I believe, is just when they would introduce myself, they'll say, oh, well, the council member from the North End, which I used to get hella pissed off and say, no, I'm the Ward 1 city councilor, and it goes all the way to Union Street, all the way to Chicopee, and as high as Hungry Hill, which we fall into this kind of line as well with Mike and myself when we had to do some things with Rick's Auto Body and trying to figure out if it went to Lower Liberty Heights Action Team versus Hungry Hill. And then what it preempted me to do is to organize a neighborhood board and make them official, which is the Lower Liberty Heights Action Team, which now this year, just this past year, was created, and now they have their own neighborhood board, right? So it's the Liberty Heights Neighborhood Board, which encompasses from the YMCA, or the old YMCA building, which is now Home City Housing's Home City Housing's a building, and back all the way up to about the State Trooper Barracks, right? So then you have kind of the north end of Springfield, which is from Patton Street. Patton Street is right there where I think where they were going to put the baseball. It was proposed years ago, like somehow 30 years ago, they're going to put a baseball diamond on in that lot across the street from the Republican. So Patton Street, where the bridges are from 291, 391, whatever it is, all the way down to Chicopee. And then Aqua usually was only from Chestnut Street all the way to Worthington Street. That was the corner all the way to Classical Condominiums, right? They never had any jurisdiction. And then when we created the E3 kind of concept, the E3 kind of covered a little bit of the entertainment business because downtown Metro is commercial. I know now that we have a lot of market rate housing that's going to be coming in. The Aqua Civic Association presumably would have a lot more access to a lot more residents, and probably we can, when these folks kind of move in, when it comes to Elm Street, more neighborhood boards could be created down the line. But from my personal opinion, when things like Kittredge, when we did the zone change, right, for the Kittredge building, that didn't go to Aqua. That went to New North Citizens Council. And we caught a letter, and at the time, our colleague, wasn't a colleague at the time, but former colleague Tim Allen represented them. And we had gotten the letters from the New North Citizens Council specific to the Kittredge building. But outside of that, me personally, I've always had a discomfort, and we've had these wars on the floor that at what point in time and status or bearing does a neighborhood board have when it comes to the special permitting process? But then from what I've heard from Solicitor Pakula, if it's part, and I've heard what Councilor Whitfield, because she was on the committee, it wasn't a requirement of the HCA application for that to come in, right? As a requirement on the application to attach that. So I know, and what I've understood is that our special permitting process is totally separate, right? From my guess, which I'm not a lawyer, but from what the HCA requirements and what the mayor believes is to be his prerogative on why he's going to give this HCA agreement and what it entails. But I think moving forward, to me, in my position, I would have loved the administration not to stipulate and throw the burden on the neighborhood board as the contributing factor of the reason why his heels are kind of dug into the ground. And it really put that neighborhood board in a bad place as well, because some of those neighborhood board folks that sit on that neighborhood board called us, regardless of how the community wants to, has their concerns. I think that realistically, what gets put out in the media is very, very important, specifically to something controversial like this, that it seems that it has been. But I know that this district, Metro, right, which obviously this is something that we always fall victim to, is that we always figure out what line we cross, what line and what barrier, what neighborhood board. Like, to me, I would think Lower Liberty Heights would go all the way down past Chestnut up to the river, just to clear out that void, right? That little square of area that we don't know where's the jurisdiction, what's the neighborhood, because the neighborhood is totally commercial. There's not a residential building in the block. To me, the closest entity to or neighborhood board to this to the Republican is New North Citizens Council, but I still doesn't mean that I agree with the statement that it falls on behest on the recommendation. And if it's a letter that he's seeking specific to that, then I think that should have just been part of when they go for the RFP or the recommendations, he could have kept that in-house to put it out there. Now it creates a concern because one, this is a minority business, and one, obviously, this is a highly populated neighborhood of minorities. And in essence, what it does, in my mind, create is some tension that doesn't need to exist, which I think that the mayor is, maybe it was demonstrated and orated a certain way that should not have been, but I think that obviously he doesn't write his own press releases entirely, but I think that's something that we have to be careful with because I was judged against because allegedly, and Mr. Papula, you were there, you were in the court of law, right? That and my reasoning essentially was because of it being next to a park, but for some reason that didn't get put into the discussion, and they judged against my decision because the South End Community Center didn't give a letter of support wasn't valid. So that's my confusion in the process, but I just want to say, those are my closing thoughts on that. I know it's still kind of like scattered brain. We're trying to bring it all in and trying to figure it out, but I look forward to meeting with all of you again in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm thinking in the beginning of December, before we have our next regular hearings meeting, we can iron this all out, and hopefully we can come together to make sure that one, Springfield's successful, and two, like the mayor likes to say, and we're all looking forward to the success, because that's why we all supported 6 Bricks in the beginning. This transition and moving from one neighborhood to another is unprecedented. This is the first time this has happened. Obviously, we're still treading water and trying to understand the marijuana business. But at the same time, Mr. Papula, just so you can take it back with you, we really do want to see cultivation. We really want to see jobs come to Springfield. And I've always been, and I've said it since 2015, the casino is a great economic development push. I respect it and I appreciate up to now, without the pandemic, what it has done for the city. And outside of that, I think that the casino is great, but cannabis is really going to take us to the next level. Thank you so much for your time. You guys are so much appreciated. I so much appreciate all of your comments and statements. I look forward to working with all of you so we can make sure that we get the best bite of the apple. And I'm talking about a big bite when it comes to cannabis here in Springfield. Thank you.